Almost everybody has a family member, friend, or relative, somebody they know. Maybe somebody in their neighborhood. So I wonder right now, almost anybody identified. Not necessarily them, but it could be a loved one, like my mom. If I had a local, too much of her life, got to the point where he couldn't even remember how to eat. You know what I mean? I had to feed my grandmother, and he forget how to eat. So he was busy with soccer, you know what I mean? Because his mind was on that. In the end, we were taking care of her at home.
She's library.
And then she started getting violent.
India, National Happy Library.
She started thinking my mother was violent. And she would take after her with a cane. Now, my mother had open heart surgery. She had to take blood thinners. Her blood was like water. It was not good to have weapons there. Weapons, because say for example, grandpa was in the military, he was World War II or whatever. He gets the military, he got the blood rush. He might all of a sudden look at you and think you want to, you know. What you so we came out with 66.
That's a pretty good
She didn't know anybody was, but she always knew me. You were her favorite. And I told her, that's your daughter. That's mom. Mom. So finally we had to put her in the nursing home, but when we did, my mother was with her all day. My mother would be there for every day until she died. And I was there from the time I got up to work. I go straight over and feed her evening meal. And I'd be with her until they told you or they told you you had to leave. Every day until she died. She had lived too much longer. She only lived like maybe. We didn't want to do it. She came by.
Thank you so much. Oh my God! I love it.
We want to come.
You guys picture things on it?
My grandmother never went on. They said, we'll feed you. Don't worry, we'll feed you. Couldn't count on it. I come in there and we'll be untouched. My grandmother couldn't reach, blind, and I feed them. A lot of them homes are not packed up to what they meant to. And it's not entirely because some of them are so understaffed. I mean, they have one person for like every 30 people. They're so understaffed that they really can't get it from my I'm going to do this box after I go with my cousin. I got the choice. I got them at home. I already brought this. They got one over there, but I'm looking at this. At least I could do this. I would hope more. I knew I had to have at least one in case they didn't have that one on display. I had to have two. I'm not going to hang around that. I'm going to do this afternoon, and I'm not going to do the one in the evening. I'm not going to hang around that long. I did one in the morning. Because I got to prepare. See, I'm speaking in the church tomorrow. I'm with the Gideon. I'm a church speaker, so I got to do presentation in the church.
I'm sorry.
I got to go prepare my presentation.
Hold them up a little bit higher.
Hey guys, my name is India Butts, and I'm here at ReadersMagnet for Chicago. And I have my two booths here, Face Paint by India and Activity Club. And then I also have Active Hair Canvas. And I'm doing some face painting out here for the crowd. See you guys later.
Thank you.
And they can't keep people. Half the time people don't show up for work. My daughter has to work extra time. She said people don't show up. When people do show up, they don't want to work. They don't. It's a different difference. The work ethic is not the same. She says somebody, I need you to do this. And the guy will say, in your dreams. Can you imagine when we were coming up, if they would have said to a foreman, in your dreams? He respected everybody. He just grabbed us by the nape of the neck and by the seat of the pants and leaving out the door. One day I see 10 people.
I'm going to put this down here. Oh.
Mike, hello, mic test. Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear authors and visitors. How about we give everyone a round of applause for being here at the ReadersMagnet booth at Readers Lit Fest, first day, day one of the book fair. Now, to start off our afternoon session, we will hear it from our book signing author. She did her book signing early in the morning. She was quite busy, but we won't miss this opportunity to talk about her very interesting book. She was with us in LA Times Festival of Books in April, and a weekend after that, we were together in San Francisco at the book confab. She's had a very emotional moment talking about her book, Quiet Fear, and that's the book that she's going to be talking about today. For over 30 years, Cynthia Giacchino dedicated her life to teaching children and young teens, and she graduated from college with 2 majors in education and a minor in psychology. She was born and raised in northern Michigan, known as the Upper Peninsula. Upon retirement and encouraged by a friend, she began her lifelong goal of writing a book. Her book, Quiet Fear, is a gripping and compelling autobiography novel that allows readers to connect with the author's survival and healing from sexual, emotional, and physical abuse. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the author of the book Quiet Fear, Miss Cynthia Giacchino. A round of applause.
Is this ready? Yes. Okay. Okay. I am Cynthia J. Giacchino, and I did grow up in the Upper Peninsula, which isn't very far from here. And I love it up there, but I came to Chicago a lot as a child. We had family that lived here, and actually my book, my abuser he was from Chicago. So coming back is a little triggering, but I've spent my whole life putting this life as far away from me and back of me as I can. And so I'm here today to talk to you about not only the events are part of the book, but the events are always followed by a chapter that is written to help you understand how the body heals and how it survives a lot of trauma. And many of us don't understand that because a lot of us, I mean, who all goes and takes a psychology class on child development, right? So there are a lot of things in our body that are just there miraculously to help us get through trauma and to help us go and move forward. But we need help to do that. And I have 3 words that I wrote on the bottom of my cover. See, speak, speak, and stop. So I want to talk about that briefly because I've been telling young people where I can see the pain in their eyes. I was a teacher for 34 years. I'm really a pretty good read of body language. And I tell them, when you have a problem or feeling inside, look at it, see it, get to know it, and then speak about it. And that is the most important thing, is to have someone to talk to. I had a therapist who said, if you need to talk to somebody and you can't talk to your mother, or your sisters are busy, your friends are having their own problems, keep going. Find someone to talk to. Just keep going. Maybe it's a neighbor, maybe it's a minister, maybe it's a complete stranger at Starbucks that you just really need to sit down and say, hey, can you listen to me for 5 minutes? But to find someone to talk to is so important for our mental health. And the last word is stop. And I put the word stop there, not like just stop doing anything. No, it's to learn how to stop letting that problem or the past get in front of us. I had a therapist, a different therapist. I had a lot of therapists. Loved them all. And she said to me, I see you as a little girl just standing here, and all the monsters behind you are running in front of you, and they're your focus. All your bad things are up here in front of you, and those bad things need to be back there behind you. And she said, just stop, no matter where you are, in the middle of Chicago, walking down the street. If that bad trigger comes up, just stop. And you remember who you are. You're an adult. You're different. Maybe you're 12 instead of 6. Or maybe you're 16 instead of 10. Or maybe you're 70 instead of 21. But you put your hands out, or you do your visual, and you stop. And you say, get back there. Because that's where it belongs. Get back there. And then you can be in the present. You can be in the moment, and you can move forward. You might only go 10 steps sometimes. I have gone through that. I have had lots of days, but 10 steps was better than 1 step. And every day you get stronger. Every year you build your strength. And it's taken me a lifetime. I'm going to be 70 this year. But I am feeling I still have triggers. My past, people say, well, just let it go. Go where? Well, let it go behind you. Because it doesn't, in my life, from my experiences, it doesn't really ever go away. It's there. And you don't know when it's going to slide forward. But if it comes forward, remember to see it, talk about it, stop it, and get it back there so you can move on and be the person you were meant to be. Okay? And thank you all. This is Reader's Magnet Tent at the Printers Row Book Festival booth. I think they're 10th hour. And book festivals are great. Come on down and get a visit. Thank you. Oh, the book. Where can you find the book? You can find it at Reader's Magnet, and you can find it at Barnes & Noble and also Amazon. All right? And I love contact. If you have an opportunity, it's www.cynthiajiacchino.com is my website. All right? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Quiet Fear by Cynthia Giacchino. Our next speaker speaker. He was with us earlier this morning, and this is a great opportunity for him to speak again for our afternoon session before he leaves for the day. His book, Firestorms of Revival, is the outgrowth of his doctoral work on historic moves of God revival. In his research, he discovered 10 characteristics of revival that can be observed in 12 moves of God in the Old Testament, 8 in the New Testament, and five major post-biblical revivals. To hear us more from this author, the author of the book Firestorms of Revival, I'll give you Bob Griffin Sr. A round of applause, please.
Hello. Oh, there it is. Whoa, sorry. Sorry to wake you up. Well, hello, old friends from this morning and new friends. I'm Bob. Did my doctorate in theology, as he said, and my major research was on historic moves of God. It was birthed out of a city in crisis. We were traveling internationally to serve expats with counseling and encouragement. We did that 3 years, but to do that, we didn't want to live in Chicago. We moved to Rockford, Illinois, and it's a nice commute to O'Hare. So 3 years, it became difficult to travel internationally all the time. Our youngest, Jonathan, wanted to be a normal high school kid in a regular school. And so as we moved into the staff of the church, a fairly large church, we began to realize that our city, our new city, was in terrible crisis. And we had more homicides per capita than Chicago. Would you believe that? Our schools were convicted in a federal suit for racism or inequitable treatment of kids on the west side of school. So taxes went sky high, property values went down, people hit the road, went outside of the city limits, and I began to be super concerned. Along the way, our mayor and some aldermen called for a meeting in city council chambers, and there were a number of clergy. And this urban specialist from Chicago began to talk about how to rebirth the city, how to bring renewal. And at the end, one of the pastors said, let's pray. And so when it was my turn, I was churning inside about the pain and the difficulty and all these issues in our city. Most of the manufacturing even has gone to China and internationally. So pastor began to pray. My turn, I began to pray, and all this pain came bubbling up, and I began to weep. And a black pastor, African-American pastor, who's now a dear friend, came from the back, came around, sat by me, put his arm around me, and he prayed until I got control. That was a pretty powerful moment. And I said, this is what has to happen in this city right here, right now. And so actually, my wife and I, at that time, began Rockford Renewal Ministries. We served for 15 years. It was a prayer meeting. We had as many as 1,500 in very regional large gatherings. And we went north, south, east, and west, praying in churches, praying in the marketplace, praying with the mayor, praying in the jails, praying everywhere we could think in the business world. I want to tell you that the city was transformed, but the church had said basically no to what it would take for a historic move of God in our time. But I did, in all my research, create a definition. What is revival? And then I looked at the Old Testament and I found 12 moves of God in the Old Testament that met that definition. 8 in the New Testament, like for example, some of you might be familiar with Pentecost. And then 5 of the major post-biblical revivals. And so I, along the way, began to think about a book. So I took my doctoral work, I put the cookies on the bottom shelf so it's readable, you know how that goes, and published the book in 2006. It's been republished in 2021. And it's just the story of how, through all of time, out of the most difficult times, if God's people will humble themselves and pray and seek His face and turn from their crazy, sinful ways, He'll hear from heaven, He'll forgive their sin, and He'll heal their land. And so that's the promise. And we're thrilled to see our city transformed, but we're still longing for revival. Now, I have two books I want to give away. I don't want to take them home. So if any of you are interested in historic revival, I'd be happy to give you one. I have them right here. You can get the book on Barnes & Noble and on Amazon. And I think that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you so much, Bob Griffin Sr. Again, he's giving away 2 copies of his book. You can grab 1 copy. Now, our next speaker is scheduled to do her book signing in the next few minutes, and she can invite everyone to grab a copy of her book. Now, the next author uses her experiences in child development to craft a book that appeals to readers of all levels. A chance encounter with a distressed child led her to write. Previously a writer of nonfiction, and she honed her writing for children at the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and applies this knowledge in this exciting story to help children understand social behaviors that will aid them in developing relationships. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you our book signing author in the afternoon, the author of the book Don't Call Me That, Miss Marianne Milton Butterfield. A round of applause.
Hello. This is my book on the table back there. Please grab a copy. My book is actually for elementary level children. We have so much bullying in our schools today, and the bullying begins in elementary school. You know, we throw so much money at the middle school and the high school to combat the effects of bullying, but what we need to do is to stop the bullying before it begins. And that bullying starts as early as kindergarten, when you have a family with multiple children and they all play with each other, they roughhouse, they wrestle, and the mother says, "Don't take it outside, it's going to be that loud." And then when the children get together with the other young children at school, they use the same behavior towards them, and the receiver feels bullied, and the quote bully doesn't understand what they've done, because they're just doing the same behaviors they do at home with their siblings. So I'd like to read it's a simple book, but it's a book to help children understand that there's some behaviors that are acceptable and some that aren't, and it depends on where you are and the circumstances. The book also addresses what bullying is, and there are questions in the back of the book for children to ask themselves if you know so that if they don't understand the question, I ask that they go to their teacher and ask them to explain it to them. And that will help in the school. Maybe the teacher can address this in classroom. I have an anti-bullying program on my website that's free for download, and it has posters and things. And even if the program itself is not used in the classroom, if the teacher were to download a poster from it and put it on the wall and go over these certain behaviors that are positive, perhaps that will help in the classroom for the children to get along together. I'm going to read you an excerpt from the book, so you'll see how simple it is, but how these issues start. This starts at chapter Scared. The next morning, Michael wasn't in a hurry to see Chuck or the other big kids at the bus stop. He hung out in the garage until Jason showed up and then dashed out. As always, the big kids pushed to get on the bus first and took the seats in the rear. Mrs. Murphy's deep laugh filled the bus. "Good morning, lads." "Let's sit up front, Jason," Michael said, tugging on Jason's sleeve. "And let's always be the last ones off, okay?" Michael felt better sitting near Mrs. Murphy. She was a lot of fun, but she made everyone obey the rules, too. Sure. When the bus was empty, Jason yelled, "Come on." He rushed into the aisle and down the first steps ahead of Michael and stopped. They jumped the last step together. Mrs. Murphy cranked the door closed and pulled away. A familiar voice startled Michael. Hey, Chung King, you trying to hide from me? Go away and stop calling me that, Michael hollered. Chuck was holding his sides, doubling over, laughing. Man, you jumped 3 feet in the air. 3 feet. You should have seen yourself. Leave him alone, Jason yelled. You're not funny. Ha ha ha. Michael, why does he always say Chung King? What's that mean anyway? Asked Jason. He thinks I'm Chinese, but I'm not. I'm Korean. Michael scowled at Chuck and pulled Jason's arm to hurry him along. Ah, he's just a jerk anyways. What's the difference between being Korean or Chinese? Asked Jason. These kind of situations develop in the book. And and it ends up that Michael actually uh, doesn't do too well in receiving this information. I'm trying not to give my whole story away because my son says I always do that. but it's a way for how Michael actually gets in trouble trying to defy his antagonist. And so it ends up that they both do things that aren't right, and they both have to be righted, of course. So it's really a story to help children understand, um, and to in building. It's to help build positive relationships that will help them while they're young, but also hopefully this will contribute to their relationships throughout their lifetime. And the let's see, what more can I say about my book? My time's up because I've got to be over at that table. But here's my book. I hope you all will pick up a copy. Don't call me that. My name is Michael. And like I said, no one wants us to feel that they're in a situation that's aggressive or humiliating or embarrassing. And the bullies may grow up and grow out of it as there are stronger and more positive people in their lives. But the victims often don't, and uh, their their issues continue sometimes through a lifetime. I'm in. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Marion Butterfield. Again, she's scheduled to do her book signing now. You may grab a copy of her book. She is right at booth number 2. And before we'll have the other book signing author, Beverly Thomas, let's hear one message first coming from one of Amazon best-selling authors of The Secret Code of Girls, The Ins and Outs of Being a Female. And this next author has also authored poems, blogs, and newsletters, and has experienced a rewarding real estate career for over 40 years. Let's hear from the author of the book, Women Telling Our Story, Bearing Our Soul from Behind the Wall. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss May Dixon.
Greetings, everyone. What a day it has been. My name is May Dixon, and my book is called Women Telling Our Stories. It's bearing our souls from behind the wall being jail or prison. I am an overcomer of domestic violence. My domestic violence started at age 5 years old, which is as far back as I can remember. And for probably 40 years of my life, when I became old enough to understand what was going on in my life, I made this decision to run away from my abuser. I ended up running away from that abuser to another abuser and then another abuser. But God was my salvation. After I went through all of this, I began to question God. Why is this happening to me? I'm a good girl. So why did I have to go through all of the challenges that I did? God said to me, I'm preparing you to be a blessing to many women. And in doing so, I had to accept this calling on my life to serve women, which I felt was um, quite a challenge because I'm an introvert. I don't do well with people, but I said, okay, I will do this. I formed an organization called A Will and Way Inc. That organization serves women and children survivors of domestic violence. As a part of that service, I was summoned, if you will, to the jail, our local jail. Now, I was terrified because all I can remember from going to the jail is those clinking doors. So I was terrified to go into the jail. But once I did it, it seems as though I owned the place. Every Saturday, I would go to the jail to minister to the women. These women were from all backgrounds. There were millionaires, if you will, in this jail. There were murderers. Every form of crime that you can think of was in this jail. And they started coming to our class. We had a class called Woman to Woman. In that class, one of the exercises we did to empower them was called Woman to Woman and to tell their story. The women were so liberated from being able to tell their stories that they wanted to somehow give back to the organization. So they volunteered to have us share their stories in a book. Well, I agreed to do that, but it took me over 10 years to actually write this book because um, having to read the stories, and there were hundreds and hundreds of stories that were submitted, having to read through those stories to try to decide which would be more impactful to the reader, um, it was overwhelming, to say the least. But I finally, I was hospitalized. I had a flesh-eating bacteria that crippled me to some extent. Um, and once I survived from that, I heard God say, okay, do it. So that was when I actually wrote the book. I took the time to read through the stories and to try and select the best ones possible. If anyone has encountered domestic violence of any kind, be it mental, emotional, physical, sexual, financial, then you know what a terrible thing that could be. And for the women that wrote these stories, they were able to conquer so many devastating events in order to get to where they were. Many of them were able to walk out of that jail and never go back. Where there's some that was drug addicted, so they ended up back in jail again. But I am pleased to say that we were able to help so many of the women that we did serve. And the book is available at Amazon.com, Barnes and Nobles, and through May Dixon LLC. Actually, the website is maydixon.com. I am appreciative to be here today and to actually share with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, May Dixon. Now our next speaker is going to be doing her book signing also in the next few minutes, and she's going to invite us everyone to be at her table. Our next speaker is a certified marriage coach whose life and experience have been a source of inspiration to thousands of couples. She is a Christian, a wife, a mother, and a renowned author. And through her experience, she has mentored many relationships and marriages. Her divine ability to reconcile broken marriages through godly counsel is worthy of note. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you our book signing author this afternoon, the author of the book Two as One Forever, A Better You, A Better Marriage. I give you Miss Beverly Thomas. A round of applause.
Good afternoon. I out of Michigan. I am thrilled to be here to share my story. It is a personal journey, a story that I never expected. And it starts with being married at age 20, going into that marriage pregnant, going through that marriage 6 to 7 years, and divorcing because of not having a good vision, a good sight on what relationship was about. So that divorce came about with 2 children, about 6 to 7 years, or I'm sorry, 8 to 9 years. And through that journey, 14 years, there was a divorce with my husband and I, and we remarried 26 years ago, not for not because of dating, not because of talking about it. He came to my home one day for the first time in 14 years, sat at my kitchen table. We were having just general conversation, and I had a spiritual encounter. The Lord said to me, "That's your husband." I received it because being a Christian, raised in the church, being involved in the church, sometimes we still don't get a hold to the true journey of what it's all about. And when I heard the words, "That's your husband," I said, "Yes, Lord." Because I think today, if I had not received what I heard, where would my life be? Because of that 14-year divorce, through that, I should say, I was engaged to another person. I had my own idea of doing things. I dated a guy for 10 years. When I felt that it was time for us to move forward, I actually felt the Lord intervene 3 times. I was that hard-headed. Yeah, it took him 3 times, and I knew it. But I was trying to push through anyway for what I thought was what I wanted to do. And when I finally received that, that was when my husband appeared in my life. The Lord set me up in my church where I got restless. It was time for me to go. I didn't know what was happening there. That happened to be like July 4th weekend that took place. My husband appeared at my doorstep like in October. The Lord said, "That's your husband." We remarried that following April, the 10th, which happened to be Good Friday. And our second son happened to witness it at that time. As we went through the second marriage, my husband said to me, "I'm through with this marriage, Beverly, again. I don't want it. I'm divorcing you." And I actually took the position that I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't signing anything. That made me have to put myself in a place to ask the Lord to fix me, fix me, fix me, fix me. That was a journey. That was a journey that took a number of years, a number of years. Through that journey, it was birthed in me two as one forever. He gave me a better you, a better marriage. That better you, it's me. It's me. I had to work on myself. I had to start realizing that when we say that we are forgiving, that we have to let it go. We cannot continue to have a conversation of the past that was dysfunctional to keep us moving forward in a positive way. We have to get to that point of knowing that when we receive love in every form that it is, it's exactly that. That's that agape love. We cannot control how someone shows that love. We cannot control how they
speak, their mannerism. But what we can do is learn within ourselves to overcome those obstacles. And that's what Two is One Forever is about. It is learning how to forgive. It is learning to speak life and not death. It is learning to turn those habits, flip them around so that we're talking positive things first, because the negative is always going to be there. I have gone through, I should say, my husband and I, we've been remarried now 26 years. So when we put it all together, it's a little over 50 years. And I can say that there are times that I will still say to the Lord, you've got some sense of humor because I'm still growing. There's absolutely nothing perfect here. There's absolutely nothing that I can say every day that I don't get up with. There's some kind of dysfunction that may come forth. But I can say that I have learned to journey through that it doesn't last. It doesn't last. I know how to get over it. I know how to pass through it. I know how to get my marriage back on track. It's not about what my husband is giving me. It's about what I'm giving my husband. And that's where my peace is. That's where my joy is. So I know that it doesn't make any difference what the storm is. You really can have peace in it. So this book too is one forever. It is a help book. It's not just for marriages. It just happened to be the course at that time. But this book is for anyone that is looking for a way to find that peace in their life, to learn how to, what it is to forgive, to know what the bedrock of their marriage is, that trust. Learning to look at self and not look at our spouse for what they're doing or what they're not doing, but continuously bringing the best of who I am to the marriage and not be concerned about what he's not doing or what he's doing. And I tell you, actually, I can say that I have actually witnessed from my husband a change, things happening. But we're all different. Our change doesn't happen all at the same time. That's not life. That's not realistic. But we have to learn through this journey that patience means to wait without murmuring and complaining. So you can find my book, Two is One Forever, A Better You, A Better Marriage. It is on Amazon. It is on Barnes and Nobles. It is in iTunes. And I want to thank Reader's Magnet for having me here today at the Printers Row exhibit. And I'll be over at the table to sign a book if you care to purchase a book. And I just say to you, journey through. Don't let life get you stuck because you can go forward, and it is good. Thank you.
So much, Beverly Thomas. A round of applause, please. Again, she is actually at booth 1 doing her book signing. So if you want to grab a copy, just approach her book signing table. She'll be up until 3 in the afternoon. Thank you so much for that, Ms. Thomas. This time, I know some of you probably enjoyed having some face paint earlier. She was that lady, which I will be introducing now. She is an author, a life coach, and the research and development quality manager at Bronner Brothers Incorporated. And as a hobby, India loves to face paint. She was born in Virginia and raised in Greater Atlanta, Georgia. She attended Point University, and with over 10 years of experience in research and development in hair care industry, she has been passionate about spreading knowledge among her entrepreneurial community. Ladies and gentlemen, to tell us more about her book, Hattie, the Hair Chemist. I give you Miss India Butts. A round of applause.
Hello, everybody. This is my first time in Chicago, and it's a pretty place. So about my book, Patty the Hair Chemist. I've been working in research and development for the past 10 years. within the hair care industry. So, like a lot of people that really don't know about what it takes to develop a hair product, or that you could even develop a hair product, although it's that simple. So I wanted to think of a creative way to let educate others and to let educate the youth about how you can go about developing your hair product. It's been many years I've been going back and forth to the hair shows, and a lot of stylists, they'll come up and ask me, like, how do they develop their own hair product, and like I'll tell them. But my overall passion was children. So one time I had decided to have an entrepreneurship day, and I had all the kids in my church come out, and I talked to them about what they wanted to be when they grow up. So some of the children said they wanted to be a video gamer, but no one said anything about science or developing anything. So I was like, okay, let me think of a creative way on educating everybody about developing a hair product. So that's exactly what I did. So within my story, I kind of created a lot of different lessons in there that everybody could learn from. It started off with a little girl getting picked on about her hair, and she didn't pretty much let that get her down. It pretty much gave her determination to do something about it. So within the book, she asked for advice. She asked her teacher for advice, her science teacher, and her science teacher told her, "Why would you want to develop a hair product when there's so many in the stores?" And she was like, "Well, I want to do something myself, and I want to do something that I want to do." So her teacher wouldn't help her, so she went home and she talked to her dad about it. So her dad is always a great listener, and her dad always motivates her and encourages her to do whatever she wants to do. So her dad talked to her one day after dinner, and she said, "Okay, well, I'm gonna do it." So the next day, she went to her mom and said, "Mom, I need you to help me do something. Dad, he motivated me to do it, so I'm gonna go ahead and do it. Can you help me do it?" So right then and there, Patty and her mom did what it takes to develop their own hair product. So normally something like this, people would consider them as kitchen chemists. So that's a lot of terms that you hear from people that develop products out of their own home with their own ingredients. So I didn't put a formula inside of there. I wanted to keep everybody guessing. So they pretty much got a whole bunch of ingredients. Like within the personal care industry, we use a lot of food grade things, like in our hair products, so that way it's safe for the hair. And there's a lot that's attached with it. So if it's safe enough to eat, then it's safe enough to put in your hair. So Hattie and her mom, they created the product and they put it in Hattie's hair. And that night, when Hattie was sleeping, she was so happy that they did this together that she dreamed about that she was in a actual hair show event displaying her product. So in the dream, she actually wins a prize for having the best product there was for developing hair. So like within the hair care personal industry, they have different contests that you can enter into for like fantasy competitions, for like different hairstyles and how creative you can be with your hairstyle. So I kind of added that little nugget inside of the book to give everybody, I guess, the idea of how it goes within the personal care industry. So with that, it pretty much developed Patty into a person that could do whatever she put her mind to because she lived out her dreams and she didn't let anyone stop her from not doing what she wanted to do. And I actually applied that to my own life. A lot of times, you're in life and you have all these amazing ideas and someone who doesn't like really believe in you, they'll come up and tell you like they don't see the vision, but you actually have the vision within yourself to do whatever it takes, to do whatever you can do. So that's the message that I want to give everybody today. Whatever passion, whatever dream that you may have, you can do it. You just have to apply yourself, keep going. Don't let nobody tell you that you can't do something, and just keep going forward. The next book that I did, it's an activity book. So one thing that I do as a hobby, I like to face paint. I like in my spare time on the weekends. So I had developed a face painting activity book. So it's filled with like different um, activities that's geared towards face painting. Like you can go on the treasure hunt and find jewels. I always put like little jewels. And one creative thing that I did, I took pictures of my actual art that I did with face painting. And I turned it into a cartoon page. So that allowed kids to color, like someone who has actually got their face painted. And I've put quite a few different pictures in there of different children that I face painted. I can show you one. I have crossword puzzles in here. This picture here is the actual skull that I had painted on a little boy's face one time for Halloween. So I'm giving the kids the opportunity to color the skull any color they want to. They can even add more art to it if they wanted to. Another picture in the book. I did a lion one time and added that into the book. It's very, very creative. But my ultimate goal of spreading the word is about Hattie the hair chemist. So if you got some time today, come check out my book on the first bench over there. All right.
All right, thank you so much. A round of applause for Miss India Butts. Again, for kids and kids alive, you can definitely grab, I think, a free face paint from India Butts right there at the corner. She'll be here, I believe, for the rest of the day. Thank you so much for that, India. Now, our next author, retired and rested, and the craziness is behind this author, Miss Turner. She was a teacher of Spanish and bilingual English, social studies, sciences, and mathematics. She retired from Neo Math and Science Academy, a middle school with students who are 99% low income, 49% Hispanic, and 33% African American, 11% white, 38% English learners, and 4% homeless. She has a very interesting book, Fighting the White Knight, Saving Education from Misguided Testing, Inappropriate Standards, and Other Good Intentions. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Jocelyn Turner. There. How's your team, Mike?
Hello. Okay. That was a lot of numbers, and in a way, the numbers bother me just because they're numbers. This is a story of numbers and how we were quickly overtaken by a desire for data that is clobbering many of our kids. It all started when I retired, went home, looked for a little more work, was offered an absolutely great job in a private school in Lake Forest, walked away from it because I couldn't do it. Too many things were wrong, too many things were not fair. I'm going to recommend a book that's, I don't know if anyone can hear me, a book that's not my book. It's called Poverty by America by Matthew Desmond. And it brought home for me just in the last few months of so much of what I have written. What it brought home was it's about access. It was always about access. And the problem is we're not offering a lot of kids access. And in fact, we're doing the opposite. At this point, everybody talks about raising the bar and how we have to use the Common Core offered to help to get that kid ready to take that test, then that would be great. But we don't do that. We just raise the bar. And the bar is up here, and the kids down here. And in poor districts, there's no money for tutoring. There's no extra help. This was hammered home for me when I retired because I went and I did some subbing in the nice, wealthy district where I live in districts nearby. There were all these lovely teaching assistants, and there were all these classes and tutors and extra facilities. But in America's less financially comfortable districts, those people often don't exist. And people don't really appreciate that because if you look at it from the outside, it doesn't look that different. But 30 kids in a kindergarten with no teaching assistant is a world away from 30 kids in another district where there is one or more extra set of hands in the classroom. That just doesn't get on the radar now. So I wrote a book. It's heavily about access and how you can't and shouldn't raise the bar unless you offer remediation and give kids a chance to catch up. That's part one. Part two is we need to recognize we are clobbering a lot of these kids. At this point, we're giving sometimes as many as 6 benchmark tests a year, not including the state test, not including Common Core-based unit tests. And if you're the kid who can't perform, that's bam, 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 fail, fail, fail. And there's almost no respite sometimes when districts get desperate because they measure, measure, measure without taking into account the fact that that's a kid. And I asked those kids because I was required to. Now, what can we do next time, John, to make this a better score? And I heard answers like, Miss Turner, and you don't even know what to do with that, right? Except to say, of course you're not, but the thing is, if you keep failing, it's going to be hard to convince yourself otherwise. I've done enough numbers, I think, but we all probably are pretty much aware that right now, our adolescents especially are having a very tough time emotionally. It's often blamed on COVID, but the fact is we've got rates of self-harm of like 1 in 25 in girls that actually make it to ERs. And they say, oh, the girls are doing much worse than the boys, but the boys are still 1 in 50. And those are sort of crazy amounts of self-harm to be hitting emergency rooms. I'm sure some of it's COVID, but I also think a lot of it is just way too many fails, way too much pressure, without offering a fair chance to fix the stuff that was lost along the way. I fully expect when this thing gets reviewed to get slammed, because among other things, I am recommending that in those districts where kids are far behind, I think we should extend the school year. If you can't do it in 180 days, give those kids 240 days. And if you can't find the money, reform property tax-based school funding. So that's my soapbox. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn Turner.
Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Jocelyn Turner fighting the white knight.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. For the authors who are able to have the opportunity to speak earlier in the morning, let's the floor first to the ones who are scheduled in the afternoon. So I hope you don't mind. Everyone's going to be given a chance anyway. Now, our next speaker was with us during the LA Times Festival of Books at LA last April, and he's going to be doing a book signing this afternoon at 3. He's a good friend of Reader's Magnet, and Jim Ruther won a BA Chemistry in 73 and MA Chemistry in 76, and PhD in Fuel Service in 79. And in 1984, he retired as Associate Professor, Fuel Science, after advising the scholarly research of 5 PhD and 7 MS graduates. However, his book is quite interesting. It's called Gunky's Adventure, and let's find out who Gunky is in the land of must believe. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the author of the book Gunky's Adventure, Mr. Jim Ruther.
Thank you all. It's a privilege and pleasure to be here again in front of you. I'm inspired by what I've heard this morning. You can't tell me in places that it took me, peaceful places and the like. My name is Jim Ruther, but guess what my nickname is? And many people ask what that means. So I'm going to show you, Gunky. Do you recognize me? You know why? There's no goatee. Now, what's the premise of my book? It's Gunky's adventures in the land of must believe. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly in the world. The advantage in this book is that I've seen the ugly. The good is all the beautiful people that I've met during my life, especially my late wife of 37 years who passed away, and dear friends and all around the world. The bad is the loss of those friends and loved ones. The ugly is the fact that I've spent the last 40 years, and I'm still working today, to demilitarize weapons of mass destruction. I'm a subject matter expert, which is qualified as a PhD with 20 years field experience, and I've been around the world in all the war zones you can think of and some that you haven't heard of yet. And my job was to render safe roadside bombs that were meant to kill innocent people. I do not believe in war, but I do believe that someone is trying to volunteer their lives for a cause that's right or wrong. I want to keep them alive so they can live on this planet and spin like the rest of the people on the world. It's a series of 26 short stories. The first one is written by my late wife. It's entitled Afterlife Love Letter and Wish. And it was written before she passed away for me to find after she was gone. And it was entitled How to Get Along After I'm Gone. And as my heart was being crushed and tears were starting to flow, I read the subtitle. It said, For a Dummy. And it was a book on how to take care of myself because she didn't think I could. She was right. The dirty laundry goes in the bottom, the wet stuff goes on top, and then do your laundry regularly. So it was a guide for me to live by. But in that story, she challenged me to write my stories and poems. Now, the first story that I wrote was a love letter back to her. And that is called Inspirational Inferno. And it was really my way of thanking her for that. And it was after that that I decided to put more stories in between and tell about some life adventures that I've had, some interesting people and places. There's nothing about war or ugliness. There's tragedy, deaths, disappointments. It's about family, friends, fears, and foes. I have a story called Jinx Come in 3. You always hear 3 things will go wrong. Well, I can tell you they can go wrong more than 3. But it's a story about true love. It's a story about recovery and resiliency. It's emotional toughness that no matter what happens to you, there's always a better place that you will be after that. You should be in the moment. You're alive. She's telling me to go on and live my life. She was teaching me how to learn, laugh, and love together, and essentially complete what she could not do. There's a story about how we met, and I'll leave it to your imagination. There was a mistake. My roommate decided to dance with a young lady as I was trying to tap her on the shoulder to dance, and she turned away from me. And now I'm in the middle of the dance floor trying to find someone to dance with. And I looked down, and there was this 5-foot-tall Russian woman who looked at me, and I said, "You'll do." And she replied with a smile, "You'll do." And it was love at first insult. It lasted for 40 years, so I was truly blessed to know this person. The story is about true love, bizarre happenings. I'll take you to some places where you've never been. Each story begins with a short poem or an attempted poem. Some are good. I will admit some of them are, but they're in there. They're alphabetical, 26. Every story takes you on an adventure. Now, the title of the story is trying to misdirect you and get your attention. You know that attention-grabbing words? You know, for example, the one is beware of hippies busting, state troopers busting hippies. One of them is close encounters of the Hooters kind. Just those words will put thoughts in your mind, but I will take you on adventure. It'll be undone when you get to the end. Where you wind up, you will not expect. That was my whole purpose. It's a journey, it's an adventure. And each story ends in a wondering. And I'm not telling anybody how to live their life. I'm just asking you to wonder, why can't you make it better for yourself and others by the options that you have? And then the second question that people ask is, what is on the cover of the book? These are lucky stones. You may never have heard of them called that. If you're a bad witch, they're called hagstones, but we don't do down things. They're rocks that have holes that are naturally made that you can see through. And I maintain that this is a portal to the other world, the world that you want to be in. And you can be there by looking through that portal and seeing how your life could be better by the options that you have. I'm not telling you what to do, I'm telling you have options. I'm making you think and wonder. And you can be there once you realize how you can make your life better through this portal. You turn the stone around and you're there. I was interviewed for why I wrote the story, what about these lucky stones, and I made a mention. They said they must be rare. They must be hard to find. I found them coast to coast, Atlantic, Pacific, Great Lakes, rivers, Afghanistan, Iraq, England, France, Germany. You can find them all over. And how do you find them? I said, it's really difficult. You look down at the stones and you see if there's a hole on top. And you pick it up and you look to see if there's one on the bottom. It's not rocket science. I am a PhD rocket science. So that's the story. It's hopefully for resiliency and inspiration and hope. Realize my career. It's therapeutic. I hope that you recognized, identified with some of the stories I had and how I've dealt with them. Sometimes I've not dealt with them very well. You'll learn from my mistakes. But in the end, what I hope is that reason, peace, and love will prevail. You must believe. Thank you.
Nicely said. Thank you so much, Jim Ruler. Again, Jim is going to be giving away copies of his book, Donkey's Adventure, later, 3 in the afternoon at booth number 2.
It's at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock?
3 in the, what time is it? Is it 2?
I think it's 2. I'll be here all
tomorrow. Sorry, tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah. Tomorrow,
Today.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
And it's available. Ready? Practice this all. It's available where all fine books are sold.
Thank you so much. A round of applause again, Ruler. Our next speaker, this is her birthplace in Chicago, and her family moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan in 1972. She received associate degree in applied science at Grand Rapids Community College. Her book, A Woman in Need, Breaking Free from Generational Curses and Witchcraft. To tell us more about it, let's hear it from Deborah Greer. A round of applause.
Deborah Greer, and this was a very difficult and painful book for me to write. But it's a subject that I wanted to share with the world because I lived in a household with a mother who believed in witchcraft, and she was an undercover witch. So when people open up doors, um, you may not know, but it does follow your children. In the Bible, in Deuteronomy, it said either you can put your family under blessings or curses. And unfortunately, that my mother, she was fascinated with the occult. And by her doing that, it opened up, it gave Satan basically a legal stronghold to attach himself to her children. It was here in Chicago, Illinois. I was 9 years old in 1968. My mother had a seance with us. It was a hot summer day, and something happened. You know, wind blew, shutters went open. From that day and that point of life, I felt such a stronghold, something that was following me. I became a child scared of my own shadow. So it was difficult for me to write this book, but I wanted to make it, um, an easy read because I wanted to share it with my family because sometimes you don't know what your family can be involved in. And when they're involved in that, it can pass on to generation to generation, and that can attach itself to your children. So that's what happened to me. So the woman in need breaking free from generational curses. Um, I had to tell my story. I had to write my book because I did not want the generational curse to continue to follow my generation. Because it says in Deuteronomy, the curses can live from the third to the fourth generation. And I am the fourth generation. And from this day forward, after I wrote the book and it was published, I thank God that it was broken. So it's hard, sometimes it's very hard for me to speak about it and write about it because it's revealing skeletons in our house. We all have some people don't and some people do, but unfortunately, I had skeletons in my family line. So I enjoyed it, but it revealed and opened up opportunities for me to share my story with the world. Basically, dealing in witchcraft, you don't know because there's an unseen world that we don't see. And there's things in this world that we may not understand. From that day, when she had the seance, things started following me. So she sort of enjoyed that when I would come to her and to mention about the fears, the nightmares, the boogeymans that was bothering me. Because that way, how Satan can continue to work in your life is when you fear life. So it was challenging to me, but I did not want to continue to live like this. I did not want my family to be under the curses. I want my family to be with God's blessings. So I hope if you do decide to read this book, that you enjoy it because it has been liberating for me to share my journey with the world because there are dangerous things out there that we don't understand. We can open up doors and it can cause chaos in a person's life. Sometimes people don't believe in witchcraft, they don't believe in voodoo, they don't believe in a lot of things. But she was a woman that traveled a lot, and from that point, she collected a lot of things. Dealing with the occult was fascinating to her, but it was a thing that stunted our growth as her children. We had some difficulties. We didn't know how to explain things that were going on in our lives. So it's like I said to myself, something is not right. But through Christian counseling, I was able to free myself through the blood of Jesus Christ. Because if it wasn't for Christ, I wouldn't be standing here right now. Because some things have happened to me in this beautiful city that should have made me right now pushing the things. But I praise God for giving me the opportunity because there's a voice inside of me and there was a need for me to express what happened in my life as a child. So it's dangerous. to be dealing with an occult. So this is what it's all about. My book is about a woman in need, breaking free from generation to person. I don't want my family no longer to be under the curses because Satan is real. There are things out there that we don't understand. So I'm kind of nervous, but I just have to tell my story that this book has liberated me to be able to share my thoughts with the world. You can buy it on Barnes and Noble, iTunes, um, Amazon. So it's available for you if you want to be able to know my journey even closer. Thank you, and I do appreciate the opportunity to share my story with Reader's Magnet.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Again, you can find her book at Amazon. Now, again, I'd like to inform everyone, to those who are able to get a chance to speak earlier today, let's give the floor first to the ones who are scheduled in the afternoon, and then they'll take your turn later on. Now, our next speaker is the author of the book, The Boy Who Became King. She was born in Laos and moved to refugee camp in Thailand as a young girl, and with her uncle and settled in Lenore, North Carolina. She relocated to California, got married, and became a mother to 6 children. Her book, The Boy Who Became King, is a very interesting story. It's a story about a young boy named David, whom has taken care of his father's sheep, was chosen to be the next king of Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Tasha Christine Young. A round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for Readers Magnet for this opportunity. I'm very grateful, and I also thank my God for giving me this opportunity. As I said, my name is Kashia Yang, and I just want to tell a little bit more. Uh, I am the author of this book, The Boy Who Became King. I have been married over 41 years. I have 6 children, 4 boys and 2 girls. I also have 3 grandsons and 1 granddaughter, and 1 grandson is on the way. And my husband is a pastor, he's over there. So I'm a pastor's wife. And now to the book. Why do I write this book? There's so many people write this story, and in so many different versions. When I first heard about this book, I wasn't quite sure I should write it because I just feel like it's not something new. But anyway, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous because this is my first book, so you can tell, right? Okay, I just want to talk a little bit before I write this book. I was a child going to church with my family, and then when I got married, my husband and I also go to church, but I really don't have a relationship with the Lord. I just know that there is God and there is a Savior, but that's all I know. And then in February 1993, I decided to surrender my life to the Lord, and that's when I become so passionate about telling story to children, especially my children at the time they're still young. So I start telling Bible story. At the time, there is no um, YouTube, nothing. So I have to buy those cassettes in the cassette player and show it to my children, and that's how my passion come to be. And at the same time, I also start volunteering for my children's Sunday school teacher. So I start then, and as time passed, about 10 years ago, I was helping the children in the classroom doing a skit about David be, become being crowned as a king, and this still voice in my just telling me, why don't you write a story about him? And to me, I would just say, okay, maybe I should go ahead and write a little story to the Sunday school children. So for a few months later, I put a little story together in a booklet, just staple them, and then I give it to the children in the classroom and say, okay, it's your turn. I wrote the story, so you go ahead and do the illustration. I share those to the children in the classroom. But then, after that, the voice inside me still telling me, you need to share to everybody else, all the children out there. And just say, God, there's so many story about David out there already, so why do I need to do? And this voice inside me said, the story is not yours. It's God's. It's the Lord. You just need to write about it. You don't need to worry about what other people write about because everybody have their own version. So that's when I pray again and again and then finally last year in July, because I never, you know about how to publish a book or how to do that. And in my heart, I was preparing to write a story in my language. I am a Hmong, so I don't know if a lot of people know about Hmong, but I am a Hmong. It's from Laos. So I decided to write it in Hmong, but when I start writing, um, seems like a lot of publishers they don't have the money, and then this Christian faith publishing volunteer and say, hey, we can do that for you. We can do in English, and then later on, if you want to, you can read, edit it, and get a second version in Hmong. And I thought and I prayed, and then the Lord said, it is a door. You need to open the door first before you can do anything else. So that's when I sent it to them, and so thankful that, the Lord opened the door. So this version, it's really not, like the giant or anything, but just my version is about a young boy who go about his own daily life, just like us. And then, suddenly God just told him that he gonna be king someday, even after 15 years later before he even become king. But at the time he wasn't rushing or doing anything. I was thinking if it's me or one of us, we might say, okay, God called me, so okay, that position is mine, I'm gonna get it. But that's not what David did. He was patient, and I just thought this story just tell for mom, dad, read to their children, talk about how being patient is important to God, being kind-hearted, just wait for the right timing, and God will, everything will succeed because on God's timing, it's not our time. So um, that's what this book is about. And this book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. So I just want to, share this little story to you guys. And I just thank you, and thank you for all you guys that are here and listen to my the story that I write about.
Thank you so much, Kashia. Round of applause, please. Okay, so we'll have Reverend Michael, and then we'll have Crystal, and then Irene, and then Lorenzo. So those are just the a few, authors that are next in line. So this time, a very few words coming from the author of the book Lucius, A Soldier's Journey. It is about a soldier in Rome, and is a man of renown from a family whose military lineage is as old as Rome itself. It's a very interesting book coming from an author who is a graduate of Midwestern Baptist College in class of 79, and in November of 79 was voted in the pastor of Tabernacle Baptist Church in Maywood, Illinois. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the author of the book Lucius, A Soldier's Journey, Reverend Michael Lavery. A round of applause.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
Where's your book?
Woo! I'll tell you, this has been great. You know, I was a little nervous coming here today. Well, not a little nervous. I was a lot nervous. I've never been to anything like this in my life, and I didn't know what to expect, quite frankly. When I got here, I looked around to see if they had a box with rotten fruit and vegetables in it, and if you'd be pelted. I was very nervous, but I'll tell you, these testimonies we've had today of folks speaking, you know, many of the things these folks have spoken about today, many of these things that people have written books about today, there are many people who wouldn't even speak. They wouldn't even speak about such things, let alone write a book. I think it takes tremendous courage to do what many of these folks, what all of these folks have done. It takes tremendous courage, and I just commend you. I truly do, and I'm humbled to be here. I thank God to be here. My book is Lucius, The Soldier's Journey. Now you may say, who is Lucius? It's a historical fiction. There's many things in it that are historical, but all the characters are fictional characters. It's about a Roman soldier. He has a family lineage that's as old as Rome itself. Goes clear back to when Romulus and Remus plowed the furrows around what later became the ancient city of Rome. He is very disenchanted with Rome. His father was disenchanted with Rome and taught him many values that were really very anti-Roman. For example, his father taught him that slavery was wrong. Of course, in the Roman Empire, slavery was something that was practiced. His father told him, son, a slave will never love its master. You should never own a slave. So what his father would do, his father would go to the slave auction, he'd purchase a slave, and then he would purchase that slave's freedom and give that slave the option of working for him for wages, or if he had family in a home that he knew of, he could leave and go back home. All of the servants that were in Lucius's house, he had purchased at the slave auction, then purchased their freedom, and they worked for him for wages willingly. He was beloved. He was a soldier of great renown. He rose to the rank of commander. He had been a centurion. He was a man of great renown. He had been a man he was an old soldier. He had many scars in his body. He'd been through many battles. But there was one thing for which he sought, and he sought truth. His father always sought truth. His father said, I'm looking for truth. I cannot find truth in the political system of Rome. I cannot find truth in the religion of Rome. So he was one day transferred to Judea because there was a lot of trouble in Judea. And while he was in Judea, he fought in a battle. There's a little something, everything in this book. It's not just a Bible story. There's a battle in this book. There's love and marriage in this book. And there's Lucius meeting the Lord in this book. And Lucius sought for truth. And one day when he was, one of his servants was dying, he had been a spy, sent to spy out Jesus, see what kind of man he was, if he was fomenting rebellion against the Roman Empire. And while he was listening to the Sermon on the Mount, he recognized the fact that this man could help my servant who's dying. He's the only hope he has. So the next day when Jesus came to Capernaum, he sent his servant to try to get him to come. And when Jesus started to come, he sent another servant to say, no, please don't come. I'm not worthy to have you under my roof. Say the word and my servant shall be healed. And when Jesus healed the servant of Lucius, Lucius's heart was changed. You might ask the question, why did you write the book? Well, I wrote the book because there's many Luciuses in this world today. There are many people who are seeking truth. There are many people who are so hungry for truth, and we live in a society where people really don't know what truth is. As a matter of fact, we've come to a point where we make our own truth now. This is nothing new. This was something that was practiced as far back as the Babylonian Empire. Sometimes we like to think that these concepts we have today are new. They aren't. But Lucius finds truth. He finds truth in the one who is the way, the truth, and the life. It's a long, long journey, but he finds the truth. And that journey is very interesting and very wonderful. And the Lord gave this book to me as I studied my devotions one night. And this book's blessed my heart. Writing it has been a blessing from God. And this book was really given to me from the Lord. I'm not a professional writer. But I would love you to buy the book. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble. It's on Kindle. You can buy it on Kindle. And I'd love you to buy it. I'd love you to read it. I'm sorry I've given out all my copies. I don't have any more. But thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity to present it before you. And thank all of you for your wonderful contributions. And I want you to know you blessed my heart. You blessed the heart of this man today. And I thank you very much. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Reverend Michael Lavery, the author of the book Lucius. Now, our next speaker is the author of the book The Crystal Pumpkin, an explosive, enthralling, upbeat, uplifting, compelling story that takes the reader on an emotional, historical journey through 18 eventful years in the life of the author. Our next speaker is frequently lauded for her educational leadership, child advocacy, and social justice endeavors. Those who witness her charismatic charm and dynamic delivery have been eternally inspired during over 2,000 speeches given in 49 American states and on 4 continents. Ladies and gentlemen, the author of the book, The Crystal Pumpkin, Crystal Arlene Kirkendall. A round of applause, please.
Thank you. First of all, thank everybody for being here. You've been here for a while, many of you, and I am just delighted that some of you are still here. Let me say, I wrote this book. Everybody's got a story to tell. Would you all agree? All of us have a story to tell. This is not my first book. All of my previous books have been research-based education books, published by traditional research education publishers. So with so much success writing research-based books, one might ask, why write a semi-autobiography? Why write a novel? Well, one of my books, From Rage to Hope, became a national bestseller. Again, research-based, tools to help educators. But as I traveled around the world, I was amazed to meet so many people who believe that you can't really educate some children. You can't really make a difference in some lives. And all I could think of was, I am so grateful that I had light givers, merchants of hope, who were able to see something in me beyond what was visible. So my book, The Crystal Pumpkin, well, you know that I'm crystal, so you understand the first part of the title. But it is the crystal pumpkin for a reason. And that's because, like many of you, I evolved. I went from being a lopsided, ugly pumpkin to being the beautiful crystal that I think I am today. But the book, if you look at the cover, is divided into 3 sections. The first picture that you see on this cover is a picture of Chicago's lakefront in the 1950s. The tallest building is the Prudential Building. If you were in Chicago back then, you know that it was a beautiful, earlier and simpler time. But in telling the story of my life in the late 50s, I'm letting you know about some characters. And some of these characters are pretty shady, but all of the characters had an impact on my life one way or the other. I talk about the light givers who saw something special in me. But if you look at the book again, you'll notice that the second eye has protest signs. Is there anybody here who was alive in the 60s? Anybody? This is a boomer's delight because the social activism of the 60s is brought out. I look at the world through the prism of a young black girl growing up in Chicago. That is discussed. And if you look around, some of the people that you see in this audience are actually in the book. That guy taking my picture right now, in the book. He was actually the best man in my wedding. And behind him is a guy that I sat behind in world geography in high school. All of them are in the book. But the 60s, everything in the book is not only historic, but beautiful social commentary. The lips in the book cover are the love story. I listened as Jim talked about his beautiful wife and the inspiration, and I thought every romance has a unique story. What I wanted to do was to get people excited, not only about their lives and their journey, but to appreciate the historical perspectives that shape and mold each one of us. I brought some flyers with me because the things that I've heard from just regular people who have read the book have literally blown me away. And on this flyer, there are comments from school superintendents, retired college deans, and just regular people who have said they couldn't put it down, that it blew them away. If you're into intrigue, if you're into mystery, some of the stories that I tell will shock you because some of the characters are quite impactful. There's everything from preachers to drug dealers, everything from rapists to holy rollers, and it spans generations. It is not only an exciting book, but it is mysterious, and for that reason, I have been told people can't put it down. I had planned to read some excerpts from the book. I'm not going to do that today because I'm going to encourage you. In fact, when I asked the person who had read the book, I said, I want to read an excerpt from the book. What do you think I should read? She said, you got to read the whole book. And since I can't do that, let me just remind you. Everyone likes to curl up with a good book. If you're interested in curling up with a good book, if you want a historical perspective, if you don't know enough about Chicago to know what happened in the 50s and 60s, if you love a good love story, if you like a tearjerker, if you like to laugh out loud as you're reading, this is a book that you will find most enjoyable. While it is available on all of the outlets, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Kindle, everybody, it's also available from the author. And if you take one of these flyers, you will notice there is a QR code. If you use that QR code, you will get an autographed copy from me. But Crystal is who I am. The Crystal Pumpkin is what I represent. Because whether you know it or not, there is an evolution in you that this book will remind you is important to acknowledge and to celebrate. We have all grown into who we are, and the beauty is we're all still growing. And so I encourage you, celebrate the authors here, but most important, find a reason to enjoy what many of us are sharing. And I cannot begin to tell you, the Crystal Pumpkin will do just that. If you have any questions, and I hope some of you do, I'd love to entertain them. But if you don't have any questions, then that tells me that you're okay. And you've gotten something that you can take. I want you to know, however, that all the characters in my book are real, All the stories are true. And I also introduce other authors. Book 1 has poetry from William Wordsworth, introducing every chapter. Book 2 has poetry from phenomenal Black poets, introducing every chapter. And book 3 has poetry, introducing every chapter about love. And so, with that, let me just say it's been my honor, my pleasure to be with you today. And I'm doing a book signing tomorrow. I don't have books to give away, but if you don't mind making an investment in a good book, I've got plenty of books that you can certainly purchase. If there are no questions, thank you again for your attention. Thank you for your presence, and thank you for loving a good book.
A round of applause. Thank you so much, Crystal Arlene Kendall. Again, Crystal is going to have her book signing tomorrow at Reader's Magnet booth. You can check her at the calendar outside our booth. Now, this time, our next speaker is the author of the book Evolving Through the Process, Accepting Yourself 100% in a Perfectly Imperfect World. Evolving Through the Process is her first publication that paints out her colorful life events. And Irene's second book, Stoic Humor, comes across like a contradiction, an oxymoron, since it involves finding amusement in situations that are often beyond our control while maintaining a sense of rationality. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Irene Iwerewan. A round of applause.
Hello, thank you so much. Before I start, I'm going to turn my back and I'd like you to read what I have on my shirt. So it says, unlock your voice, inspire your world. And that is what we're all doing here today. We're all authors and all books are different. And one thing I'll say is I respect every author here. Everyone has a story to tell and everyone should use their voice. My first book, my first publication, Evolving Through the Process, it's very different from most books because it has 96 short stories. Each story is complete. Each story is true. And it's about how I evolved to be the person I am today. And one thing my book tells you is this: do not take life so seriously. And it was based on my first book. I began to write a humor series. My humor series is about taking different professions and seeing the humor in them. Because one thing I found out, I have 3 professional careers. I have been an accountant. I worked there with Arthur Anderson. I have been a registered nurse preceptor. I have trained nurses. And currently, I'm a senior clinical research associate, so I travel around the US every week. My family would tell you I'm never in town, so I can monitor new medication coming to the market. And all these professions are so serious. And I said, oh no, there's got to be humor because we're all in this life to have fun. So from my first book, Evolving Through the Process, I'm going to read something about in here. This book, you can pick up from any page and read a complete story. All the stories, like I said, are true. 99% of the quotes are my quotes, and I do have quotes from other authors and other entertainers, and I mentioned them here. So I'm going to read one of the stories. This story is called story number 32. You become chosen when you choose yourself. My quote by Irene Warren. I remember watching the famous TV series Grey's Anatomy. There was a scene between Meredith, Ellen Pompey, and McDreamy Patrick Dempsey, when Meredith wanted McDreamy to make their relationship exclusive. Meredith tearfully verbalized, choose me, pick me.
when she wanted Matt Dreaming to pick her as his partner. We feel pure joy when we know someone has chosen us. However, not being chosen sometimes may lead to insecurity as we think we did not meet expectations. We may internalize this to a point where we are withdrawn or feel suppressed, eventually leading to depression. As children, we played games where the team leader had to choose team players. Many of us went through that heart pounding moment where we're concerned about not being selected. Then we experienced pure joy and relief when we heard our name called out. Think about the workforce as well. While seeking for a particular position with a company, we go through the process of interviews. When we're finally among the top three aspirants, we start having palpitations because we know the company is only hiring one candidate. We want to be chosen. Although we wish for others to choose us, in many of life's circumstances, we don't pick ourselves. In an experiment with different age groups, ranging from teenagers to older adults, people were asked three questions. The first question was to name five people they admire. The second question was to name five people they would love to show kindness to. And the third question was to name five people they considered significant. The popular answers were celebrities, world leaders, church ministers, orphans, and the physically disabled individuals. No one mentioned their own name. The truth about being chosen starts with the individual. Once we start picking ourselves, we have already won. We choose ourselves when we give ourselves the same respect, treatment, and consideration we give anyone else that we consider important. Essentially, my book tells you to pick yourself. Look at yourself as being important. Don't just think of it as world leaders or church leaders. You count. Pick yourself first. It is not being selfish. When we fly, we hear the steward or stewardess say, in the event of an emergency, put on your air mask first. Put your oxygen mask on first. Apply that to everything in life. Pick yourself first, and you'll see how things fall in place. The other two books I have on now, actually, the third is on its way. I began writing the humor series book. They're very simple books, fit in the pocket, and they're just about professions and not taking life so seriously. In every profession in life, you have to find the humor in it. Life is not that serious. Everyone needs to relax and have fun and not take life so seriously. So my humor series is on. There are about 7 humor series in the works, and they're all coming out one at a time. And as usual, all the books, Amazon, Barnes& and Noble. Oh, I also have the book in the Netherlands. It's on Mighty Ape. Very excited. And also in Germany, I just got invited about 2 weeks ago. It's on in Germany as well. So grab a copy. It's on all Kindle ebooks. Grab copies of the humor series as well as being your authentic self, loving yourself 100% in a perfectly imperfect world. Thank you.
A round of applause, Irene Ibaribon. Thank you so much. Our next author resides in the city of Country Club Hills, Illinois, and he is the founding pastor of the Life Center Church of Deliverance located in the city of Chicago. In addition to being an author, he's also a recording artist and prolific minister of the Word of God. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the author of the book, Maintaining Your Deliverance, Mr. Lorenzo Irving. A round of applause.
I want to say good afternoon to everyone. I'm indeed honored to be able to share about this book. I just want to congratulate all of the authors. This has been wonderful just to hear of all the authors and the journey that you made and the contributions that you're making through your publication. Well, the name of my book is Maintaining Your Deliverance. And of course, it is a Christian-based book based upon um, effective strategies. We deal with effective strategies for sustained victory. Even as the person that just left here talked about the process, a self-help type of book. This book is a self-help book as well, but of course on a spiritual basis. And it deals with maintaining your deliverance and walking with God in the place of success and victory. This is actually a revised edition. I wrote this book in 1995, which was my first edition, which was truly quite a bit smaller than this. But in this revised and expanded edition of Maintaining Your Deliverance, I've added some keys and information that will further enrich you as you continue your walk of victory. And this book is a practical guide and powerful resource that you can refer to over and over and over again. Again, it is a Christian book, based upon your walk with the Lord. And of course, deliverance just simply means that you've had a relationship with Jesus Christ and experience with God that have brought you deliverance and peace, and that you know the Lord and you want to continue to be sustained in that and continue on your path to victory and consistent victory with the Lord. All right. Also in this book, it deals with the power of your testimony. And a number of the authors talked about their story, and your story is a powerful thing, and especially if your story is about your walk with God and how the Lord has worked in your life and brought you the peace and the joy that comes with being a Christian and serving the Lord. Your story also, there's a section in this book that talks about your story, how your story is the proof of God's personal dealing with humanity as it relates to your walk with God. Your story is your legacy. Your story secures you. Your story draws people to God. As you begin to share with them about your relationship and your encounters that you've had with the Lord, it will cause people to desire to know God. Your story solidifies your faith as well. But also in this book, it deals with, of course, this is a spiritual warfare type of book. And of course, it deals with weapons, the weapons of our warfare, and it deals with four weapons that the enemy, that Satan uses against us. And those weapons that this book can apply to your spiritual life, but it can also apply to all of your life. One of the weapons that the enemy uses is stagnation. This is characterized by lack of development and advancement and progressive movement. You become stagnant when you are careless about your spiritual life. And so it's so important that we do not allow the enemy to cause us to become stagnant in our walk with God and in our pursuit of victory in the things of the Lord. Also, distraction is a weapon that the enemy uses to avert our attention from spiritual things and to get us into so many other things, but then to neglect our spiritual life and our walk with the Lord. The enemy brings also interruptions to break our momentum and also the spirit of confusion, to cause to be unable to think with clarity or to act with intelligence and understanding, and the cause to be bewildered or perplexed as it concerns our walk with God. So, Maintaining Your Deliverance is a very important book, I believe, a manual to help you as you begin to pursue a walk with the Lord, to grow in your faith and to live a life of consistent victory. It is possible. And of course, as we maintain our deliverance, we enjoy the peace that God promised to give to us, and all of those that will continue to grow in their faith and in their walk with God. Now, this is not my first book. This is actually my fifth book. I have several books, and a few of them are on Amazon. This particular book, you can actually go to the section where this lady is standing, and you could get the code there, and it'll take you to Amazon. If you'd like to get a copy of this book, I highly recommend it, of course. Amen. I am the author, but I have other books as well. But I also am a artist, of course, a music artist as well. And I have a couple of CDs, that I would probably give away to anyone that's interested, and a couple of books as well. All right, so again, get this book. It's also available on Kindle, as an ebook as well. All right, Maintaining Your Deliverance, Effective Strategies for Sustained Victory. Get it and be blessed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lorenzo Irving, for that wonderful talk. Now, our next speaker, she was with us earlier in the morning, and it's a very interesting story. She's a grateful believer in Jesus Christ who has experienced victory over alcoholism. She is originally from Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and she's a single mom of 3 adult sons and an adorable granddaughter. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the author of the book, Recover Your Mission, Miss Deb Runge.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share here today. So, yes, my name is Deb, and I'm a very grateful believer in Jesus Christ who has experienced victory over alcoholism. However, I still struggle with a lot of other things. But this book is called Recover Your Mission, and the subtitle is How a Drunk from Wisconsin Became a Missionary in Haiti. And so this is my story. I go around and I share a lot of my story at Celebrate Recoveries. Maybe you've heard of that ministry. It's a 12-step Christian program. And God has radically changed my life. And so when I share my testimony, I don't even have enough time to share what God has done in my life. And so this book is a summary of many of the things that God has done. It's not all, because I have another book in me, I believe, too, because I need to tell the rest of the story, right? But I also am in the process of doing a workbook that goes along with the book as well. Because the book is kind of unique in how I wrote it, because at the end of every chapter, I have a question for you to ponder. Because here's the thing, I wrote this book about my life, but if God did it for me, he can do it for you too. Amen? And so that's the idea, that God can do it for you. So at the end of every chapter, there is a question that applies to you, the reader, and then also a scripture and a quote, and then a worship song that applies to the chapter as well. So it's a little unique that way. And like I said, I am in the process of a workbook, and actually I'm doing other things for women that are like women over 50 who are struggling in life and just want to live life to their fullest. And that was me, but I'm also a missionary in the country of Haiti. And my primary focus is to bring Celebrate Recovery to Haiti. And unfortunately, I'm not in Haiti right now because of the situation of the country there. But the sales of my books and the different things I'm involved in are to support the mission work that I'm doing in Haiti. So I'm super excited about, first of all, just what God has done in my own life. It amazes me that I am an author, that I'm a missionary, that I'm also a pastor, and so God has radically changed my life. But the other thing about my book that's really amazing is I wrote this book from start to finish in 8 weeks, from start to publication, 8 weeks. So that is really amazing. And to me, it tells me that God was in the center of the publication. And so I think that's about all I have to share. There is one other thing. I believe that God has a purpose, a plan, and a mission for every single person. Every single person. And if you didn't believe that, I would try to tell you otherwise. Because that's why I called the book Recover Your Mission. God can and will recover your life, change your life, and heal you from the inside out. So that's what my book is about. And so thanks so much for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Deb. Now, our next speaker, she was with us earlier as well, and she lives in southern West Virginia and has been an educator in Logan County schools for over 35 years to tell us more about her book. It's a memoir that's a uplifting story of survival from abject poverty set in the hills and coal camps of southern West Virginia. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Miss Catherine Manley. A round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me? I try to be loud over there. Thank you. I want to thank God for allowing me to be here at Printers Row in Chicago. And a big thank you to Readers Magnet. They have an awesome team from John, James, Nicole, and Jess, and all of them. And I was born and raised in southern West Virginia in the hills and hollers. And when I was only 6 years old, I think this morning I said 5, I was 6 years old, my father sold our 2-room shack for 30 cans of Wilson's evaporated milk to feed my new baby brother. He moved us across the mountain to another county, and we still struggle with poverty for years. Also, my father had one leg and one hand, and I would go down to the dumps with him and help him find wooden and materials to help make him a wooden peg leg. We begged on the streets in southern West Virginia in front of dime stores, and we would sit on the streets and beg all day. We also went door to door begging with shopping bags, so I knew street begging and I knew door to door begging very well. One of the things unique that my father and I did, we had an old Chevy panel truck that was a standard. And when I was about 3 or 4 years old, he would give me a stick and show me how to punch the gas, because he had one foot and he had to operate the clutch. So I helped him drive that old truck with a stick in my lap. Now, yes, that I'm describing to you generational poverty, and we all know that poverty can be generational or situational. And you have the choice whether you want to stay in poverty or you want to fight to get out. And I wasn't satisfied with the way things were, and I wanted to fight to get out. So in southern West Virginia, there is something in the water that we drink called fatalism. In other words, like, I'll never get out of this, but I learned to spit it out. And I worked hard, went to college, and I graduated with 3 degrees. I became a teacher and a writer. My book is Don't Tell Him You're Cold, and it has some of the same elements that you find in Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt and The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, and even more so Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. The book is appropriate for grades 8 through adult, and it's appealing to a wide range of readers, including memoir and young adult. And it came out in September 2019, and I'm very proud that it's selling. And a lot of teachers have bought classroom sets of 30 for their classrooms, and they use it when they're studying poverty or units such as handicapped adults, themes of class, coming of age, abandonment, and the book just has so many themes. So I'm blessed because educators are buying the book, and so are professors. It is being used in some college classes. My achievements include when I was a teacher for over 30 years in West Virginia before I retired. I won several teaching awards, and including the West Virginia Teacher of the Year semifinalist. And also, my book was a semifinalist for the William Faulkner's writing contest. And just a couple of months ago, I was named the West Virginia Literary Hall of Recognition winner. I'm very proud of that. You can find my book on Amazon and Mountain State Press. And if you are an educator or a professor and you would like to buy a set for your classroom, Mountain State Press will give you a 40% discount. And that's a really good deal because I think that the book sells for like $20. You can also find me, Kathy Memoir at gmail.com. And I would love to visit your town and talk to students and adults about the culture of poverty. You know, poverty is everywhere. It's universal. It's nationwide. It's not only in southern West Virginia. It's in Miami. It's in Chicago. It's everywhere. And we have to understand poverty before we can fix it. We have to help let students know that they must get out of their comfort zone and they must fight for a better life. And there's a way that we can help them do that. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for Catherine Manley. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, our next speaker is an author of several books, which she actually has today, and she's scheduled for a book signing in a few minutes at booth number 2. Most of her books are children's books. Now, our next author grew up with a love of reading and books, stories, and news, but she never expected to write books. It all started with a granddaughter asking for a bedtime story. As the words came from her mouth, Chloe came to be. She's unsure of how. Later, when she chose to have Chloe published, a second story formed in her mind, then another and another. She has all the books with her today. Let's hear it from our next author, the author of Cora, Sammy, Timmy, and Chloe. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Elaine Vanderberg. A round of applause.
Well, basically, he gave you my life story already, but that is what happened. I wrote, my granddaughter asked for a good night story. I had 3 children who had never asked for a good night story, and I just started talking, and Chloe came out. I wrote it down maybe weeks, months later, but I did remember it. And then after I wrote that one, yeah, I'll show you. Chloe, this is Chloe. This is Chloe, my first book. And interesting pictures on it. Anyway, after Chloe, I didn't think about it for a long time, and I decided to publish it. And my husband said, no way, is he going to pay for me to publish a book? So another 10 years passed, and so did my husband. And I decided, what the heck. And after I started with this, I got other books going, and they came in my mind. And what I have here, 4 books for children, but each on a different subject. The first one, Chloe, is about the left behind angel who couldn't keep up with her academic studies. She couldn't make a rainbow, hers were always jagged. And eventually, it follows her story as she finds her way. And this was my heart. I got an idea, and as I said, that one was about not keeping up in school. This one, Timmy the Timid Cloud, is about bullying, and it's very simple. Uh, Timmy has friends, and they create a wonderful event for people. I'm not going to give away the stories. Then the next one, Sammy. Sammy came along by virtue of feeling sorry for deformities. Children, maybe they're missing an ear, maybe they're alopecia involved, whatever. But the whole point is that you're not alone. There are others with problems, and you can overcome those problems if you believe. And that's the bottom line of my story. Believe. And the last one, Cora, an all alone girl. She was living with her mother, who was desperately poor, and they lived in a fancy
neighborhood. And Cora had no friends. Cora was alone. And by virtue of a librarian, her life was changed. And changed very successfully. Again, believe and also support your local libraries. Without libraries, we have no future with reading.
Yeah, maybe you can invite them at your book signing table. Like right now, she's actually scheduled for a book signing at booth number 2. Thank you so much. A big hand for Elaine Becker. Now, our next speaker is an award-winning author, speaker, communications consultant, and connector who founded Vivian L. King Connections after writing When the Words Suddenly Stop, Finding My Voice Again After a Massive Stroke. Ladies and gentlemen, to tell us more about her book, When the Words Suddenly Stop, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Vivian King.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is a great event. It's my first time. Um, and so thank you so much for coming out. I wrote When the Words Suddenly Stopped, Finding My Voice Again After a Massive Stroke. And in 2013, it's my story. In 2013, I suffered a stroke. It came out of nowhere because I don't have history of stroke in my family. I don't have high blood pressure. I still don't. I was relatively active. I just woke up this one morning and didn't feel right and went to a Girl Scouts breakfast and collapsed at the Girl Scouts breakfast. And so I'd like to just read a couple. I'll have to put my glasses on for this, but read you maybe the first chapter just to kind of set the tone. So the first chapter, which is short, chapter 1, Waking Up on Friday, October 25th, 2013, written on October 25th, 2018. 5 years ago today started out like any other. I woke up, lamented that it was early and that I had to be at a Girl Scouts breakfast by 7:30 a.m. But other than that, I felt fine. The comfort of my bed almost made me text Sadna to tell her I wasn't going to be able to make it after all. But she had invited me weeks ago. I had to get up and go. After showering and getting dressed quickly, I rushed out of the house with my purse and makeup bag in hand. I was going to have to do my makeup in the car again. Of course, I only do my makeup at stoplights or in the car at my final destination if I haven't finished on the way. In hindsight, my not putting on my makeup was the first unusual thing to happen that day. I arrived at the hotel where the breakfast was taking place and I walked in without my makeup. At the door, they told me my table was in the front, which made sense because Sadna was a board member. The hostess escorted me to my table, and as I entered the ballroom, there were many people I knew who were welcoming me into the room. A hi Vivian on the right, a hey girl on the left, complete with a couple of hugs. In my mind, I was returning the greetings as I normally did at these types of events. Once we arrived at my table, I said hello to Sadna and sat down in the only empty seat. Sadna looked at me and said, Man, I know you were going to get sushi after work yesterday, but you must have tied one on. I just looked at her. At that point, a former colleague I worked with at today's TMJ4 said hello from across the table. Again, I returned the greeting. Someone next to me suggested that I start eating breakfast. I took one bite of sausage, and that's the last thing I remember clearly for nearly 10 days. So the next part really talks about just that breakfast and how at the breakfast I collapsed. They called 911. They took me to the closest hospital. I was there for about an hour before they took me to our hospital because I worked at a healthcare system at this point that specialized in stroke. And I was in neurological ICU for 10 days and in the hospital for a total of 32 days. And because this really came out of nowhere in my mind, I just, and when I, at the end, up on discharge days, when I found out why. And doctors told me that birth control pills over the age of 40 is what caused the blood clot in my brain. And it was on the left side of my brain over the part that manages your speech. And I just couldn't believe it. And I tell women that half the women say, yes, my doctor took me off birth control pills in my mid 30s. The other half said, I'm over 40 and I'm still on birth control pills. And so there was such a wide disparity of how many knew and how many didn't know that I said I need to write my story so that other people can learn about this link between birth control pills over the age of 40 and stroke. And I hope that my book helps many, many women and many other people who are having a stroke as well. So, and hopefully it will prevent them from having a stroke. So that is the thing. So I think my 5 to 8 minutes is maybe up at this point. But thank you so much for coming out today. This is a great literature fest, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for Vivian King. We're down to the last few authors. So those who were able to speak earlier, you definitely can't use the time. We're up until 4:30. Our next speaker is the author of the book, An Audience of One, The Seriousness of Worship. He was born in Monroe, Louisiana, and after migrating to Chicago, Zachary began his musical journey at the age of 10. His book, An Audience of One, is a book given to him by the Holy Spirit to have him exhaustively examine our worship toward him. To tell us more about An Audience of One, I give you Zachary Wayne Lavender. A round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here. I am Zachary Lavender. I am a musician, composer, conductor, mainly working with children's choirs in Chicago. I'm a new author. I never thought about writing a book. Had no idea I could write a book. I read music when I was 16 years old. In 2015, had a journal. I was journaling. All of a sudden, something says, Zach, why don't you take your journal and write a book? And that's what I did. This is my third book. I've written 4 books to date. I have a 5th book that will be out in the spring of 2024. An Audience of One is a book talking about making God our only audience and He's the center of our worship. I wrote the book primarily because I was struggling with understanding what is worship? What is it? And it wasn't until 2000 when my pastor at that time asked me to take over the praise and worship team. At that time, I knew, okay, Zach, what are you doing? You know nothing about worship, so you got to start doing some research. And what I did, I opened God's Word, and that's what I learned, that worship is only about Him. Not me, not you. He is the only audience. And the title came to me when I heard Dr. Tony Evans speak on a sermon. I can't remember the title of the sermon, but he said An Audience of One, and I stopped. Someone said, that's a book. And that's where it began. I started writing about it. But I want to read to you just one paragraph of the book. It's on the back cover of the book, as a matter of fact. And it says this. It says, we're living in an evil, uncertain, and perilous time. Diseases, famines, devastations, and all sorts of destructions are plaguing the earth. God is speaking, and we are not listening, nor are we responding. This is all due to our lack, deficient, incorrect, and unbiblical worship. We can no longer afford to execute worship according to our opinions. There is a book filled with God's words, God's desires concerning how we must worship Him. It's time to open it, read it, study it, and apply it the way God commands, in spirit and in truth. And worship An Artist of One. That's exactly how we do. The book can be found on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, on my website, sanctuaryofrefuge.org, and that's An Artist of One. That's exactly how we do.
An Audience of One is Zachary Lavender. A round of applause.
Any questions for me? Thank you.
All right, our next speaker is an accomplished listener, conversationalist, and friend to most he happens upon. He has completed his book, The Lessons of My Father. Time waits on no man. Theodore is a father, an uncle, a brother, and a friend to many, and his purpose in life is to bring truth to the world, since truth, as he observes it, understands it, and relates to it. For to the author, truth is the most important ingredient to life. For without it, know, one cannot know oneself, know life, and live it to the full. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the author of the book, The Lessons of My Father. Time waits on no man, Mr. Theodore Robinson.
Thank you very much. Glad to be able to be here, and we thank the Reader's Magnet for making this possible. And first of all, I'm having a little bit of hiccups, so forgive me for that. They come and go. This book is about my father. I get passionate in speaking about him. My father impressed me as a man. He had rules to live by, and he had rules for me to live by. It was not enough for me to become a man by age. It was important to my father that I became a man by action. And therefore, I had to learn some things to do that. You don't just show up at adulthood and you're a man. There are a lot of guys walking around that are adult in age, but are not men. There are a few excerpts from the book. I didn't bring the book with me, so I won't be reading from it. But there are three big lessons that I would highlight. One of them is my father taught me that abortion is wrong. I was in the eighth grade, and I ran home, and I love civics. I hated social studies, but I love civics. We got to talk and give opinions. And so I ran home, and I asked my father, I said, what do you think about Roe versus Wade? My father turned to me immediately and said, don't you abort a child. Don't you kill a baby. That's what he said. Don't you kill a baby. And I tell people, I learned what I believed in abortion in 2.3 seconds because my dad told me. I learned why many years later. Now, I am pro-choice. I would never abort a child, but I understand the rights of others, and I support that right. But I do believe what my father said about aborting a child. Okay. Now, that's important generally. But I want to tell you something. I'm the 12th child of my mother and my father. My father actually had 13 children, and my brother Otto Robinson has children, and they actually run a string here in Chicago. I have Stevie Robinson, who sings and performs and ministers here and helps the poor. I have Eddie Robinson Dean here. He's here with me, and he is the son of Otto Robinson Jr. Otto Robinson Jr. is the star in the movie Stony Island that was filmed here in Chicago. Y'all look that up. That's my nephew, Otto Robinson Jr. And then his son is here with me today. So that's so my father had 12 children, 13 children. I was the seventh son. Now, all the children were born 2 years apart, except when it came to me. I was born about 5.5 years afterwards. They were not planning for me. That's very important because as my father believed in an abortion, I wouldn't be. And so that is a very big lesson in that regard, and one of the things about why I respect my father so much. So that's one of the areas. The second area is that, and this was the book says, the lessons of my father, and it is dedicated to him. It says, time waits on no man. Now that was my father's most important lesson. My father was adamant about time. His quote was, time is the only thing that man has not found a way to control. He says, it doesn't matter if you change it with a leap year. He says, time keeps going on. You're adjusting to time.
It doesn't matter if you decide to start it over at 12 o'clock. Time keeps on going. You have to respect time. And he certainly made that impression upon me. I go out on the golf course and I have a watch on because I want to know what time it is. Why? Because my daddy put that in my head. Time is important, you know. After about 4 hours of golf, it's time to go home whether you're through or not. But anyway, the third area, and this is the one that's most important for me, and that is, my father taught me that a man is not worth his weight in salt. Salt, my friends, is a very cheap substance. You're not worth your weight in salt if you do not take care of your children. And that was one of the things that impressed upon me. I've impressed it upon my sons, maybe too well, because my sons haven't given me any grandchildren. I'm running around finding all my Eddie is my great nephew. And I'm running around. I met his daughter, took a picture with her this afternoon. And so I met my great niece. And so I'm collecting all my greats, and they're going to be my grandchildren because I'm not sure I'm going to get any. But I told my sons, you're going to take care of them. Because if you don't, I'm going to take care of them, and I'm going to be knocking on your door every day, reminding you what you're supposed to do. And they believe me because they know another lesson, I'm a man of my word. And they know that. They had to grow up under me. If I told them they were going to get their butts beat, they would get ready for it because they knew it. That was the situation. A man of my word. You know, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, or you'll get a call back saying, hey, look, something happened. I can't do it. So anyway, take care of the children. He had no use for anyone who did not take care of the children. He didn't respect them and such. But those are the three big lessons coming out of there that I personally relate to. But there are other things. Be a leader. He advocated being a leader. If you're going to do something, you decide to do it. Don't follow somebody. And it doesn't mean you can't follow. I lead organizations, but I follow in organizations. But I choose to follow. So, and that's the choice. So there are lots of lessons for you to live by, and again, not to grow up and just show up. The one thing that happened with me when you talk about taking care of children, you might have thought that he would have dissuaded me from premarital sex. He did not. But what he did do is he put it on my mind that every time I had a sexual encounter, that my life could change because I was going to take care of a Robinson child. And that was whether I was 14, whether I was 18, whether I was 50. I was going to take care of a Robinson child. And so therefore, you did not do that without thought behind it. And so many people do. But I understood that just like I wouldn't let my son not take care of his grandkids, I wouldn't, my grandkids, he wouldn't do that as well. And so he raised a responsible individual. And those are the lessons I've shared with you. There's some other things. I went off to college and such as that. It's a great book, I think. It has lots of lessons and applies to individuals' lives. I'm more than willing to take any questions that you might have. If there are no questions, thank you for listening, and please check out the book. Thank you.
Thank you so much, people. Thank you so much, sir. Now, our next speaker believes that dementia is one, if not the most, devastating mental illness in our society today, and shows no favorites in who it chooses to be its victim. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the author of the book Dementia Help Guide, Volume Number 1, Mr. Warren Patton. A round of applause.
Thank you very much. I wrote this book, Dementia Help Guide, Volume 1. I was going to write a Volume 2, but I had to start somewhere. This is actually my first book that I've ever written. I have my photo and bio on the back. And I wanted to put something out that would be useful to just about anybody, because most of us here either have a family member, a friend, a loved one, or someone that we know that might be a victim of dementia. I mean, memory loss, it's basically, you're looking at any type of brain disorder that is very, very devastating, because I had an uncle, and my mom is starting to suffer from it, and I had an uncle that had it most of his adult life. So, and I'm starting to forget stuff now, so I said I better write everything down before I forget it. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the reasons why I want to write something that I know people have a practical need for, but I wanted to make it affordable $9.95. I figured somebody would be interested enough to at least pay $9.95 for something that can help them, or they can maybe buy it and give it as a present or a gift to someone else. I'm not going to tell you everything in the book. I'm just going to read the table of contents to give you an idea of what is in the book. I should have brought my glasses, but in chapter 1, it's what is dementia? What are the symptoms? What are some factors? Chapter 2 is what are some factors that increase your risk of dementia? Chapter 3, what are some of the early signs of dementia? Chapter 4, I can't remember your name, but I recognize your face. Chapter 5, self-denial is not the answer. Seek a medical diagnosis. Chapter 6, FDA-approved medications to treat Alzheimer's disease. How beneficial are vitamins? Chapter 6, how beneficial are vitamins and supplements? Chapter 8, dealing with the frustration of dementia. Chapter 9, living with a family member with dementia. Chapter 10, seniors, stimulate your mind to stay sharp. Chapter 11, is there a cure for dementia? Chapter 12, some tips for living your best life with dementia. Chapter 13, I feel your pain. I too suffer memory loss. So I think it's a really good book, and currently it's only on Amazon right now. So we'll see what happens down the road with this, but I do plan on putting out a volume 2, and it's going to be a little bit more extensive because I'm doing more research on it. And so I did have some writing experience before I did this. I never wrote a book before, but I retired as a chief journalist in the Navy. When I was in the Navy, I used to do mostly feature stories and hard news stories for All Hands Magazine, Surface Warfare Magazine. I also used to write speeches for some of the admirals that was in the Navy. So basically, I kind of felt I had the inclination to maybe put the book together. And I think I'm going to do something more or less in the lines of fiction, as well as this book right here, because I had a very exciting life while I was in the military, and I basically want to be able to put that down so that I can share that for a lot of people. I think it'd be very entertaining, and it'll be humorous as well. So this is more of a serious book right here, and I hope that you guys get a chance to read it. Just check it out, and if you have Kindle, you can see it. You can read it for free. If, you have the Kindle. I forgot which part of Kindle is free, but one is $2.99 and the other is free. So I don't have Kindle, but I know that you can read it for free if you have it. So anyway, I wanted to thank everyone, and I wanted to thank you for the opportunity for me to come out today, and I look forward to hearing from you guys in the future.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ryan Patton. Now, I believe we are down to our last speaker for day 1 of the Reader's Magnet booth here at Printer Store Lit Fest. She spoke earlier, but I'd like to give us one more chance because during her time, that was when the band played our music, and we can barely hear her. And she doesn't deserve that. The book is so amazing. So it's about fighting the white knight, saving education from misguided testing, inappropriate standards, and other good intentions. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Miss Jocelyn Turner.
Thank you. And hello again. This is my first book, although I'm nearly finished with the second book. My subtitle says a lot of it. Saving Education from Misguided Testing, Inappropriate Standards, and Other Good Intentions. This book is the result of an absolute burnout year that led to my early retirement from teaching. We got a new principal, a gunslinger from Texas, basically, who came in to fix us. And fixing us meant 2 benchmark tests 3 times a year. That was the year they gave the state test part twice. And I ended up, in essence, spending more than 20% or 1/5 of my teaching hours testing kids. Now, in the first place, nobody would ever need that much data ever anyway. But in the second place, my students were bilingual students. And initially, I wasn't allowed to translate because that would affect quote, the comparability of the data. Well, so I have to give them non-stop tests, only I can't do it or translate it in a language that some of them understand. The tests are set at a 7th grade Common Core level, only I've got 2 classes that entered at an average 3rd grade level in math. They were hopelessly lost all year. Now you say, well, then you're the teacher, you're supposed to fix that. And I drove to McDonald's about half an hour every Saturday morning, and I bought tacos, and I bought frappes, whatever they needed, right? And I got somewhere, and I'm sure a couple of those kids advanced a few years. But in essence, you can't cover 4 years without a lot of remedial education. And it wasn't available. There was a little tutoring after school, but that was about all the school district was offering. Well, you can't fix something like that with 2 hours of tutoring after school when kids are already tired. So, in essence, I spent the whole year just bam, 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 test, test, test. And all these really nice kids are getting more demoralized by the week. I will say that by October anyway, they were at least pulling for me. September was so ugly I can't even describe it because, of course, they were all angry. They were angry. Eventually, they were beaten down, and in the end, I thought, I can't do this anymore. And I thought, I have to write this book because people don't understand. And I think there are 2 big things they don't understand. One is, you can only raise the bar if you offer remedial education. You've got to find the weekends, the evenings, the summertime. You've got to find the hours necessary to give those kids a chance to learn what they don't know. And if you don't provide remedial education, that's malpractice. Because this is my other major point. We are just demoralizing these kids. If you don't have a chance to win, your best strategic move, honestly, is to decide not to play the game. And I watched that happening, right? I watched kids just kind of withdrawing. If you can't win, why fight? Well, this is the result. I'm almost finished with another book which explains how we got here. Starting with No Child Left Behind and the idea that we would judge education by tests, compounded by Race to the Top, which said you must get higher test scores to get money, and then really added on with the Common Core standards simply because they are rigorous and they are also inflexible, and you have to flex. We've just been ignoring so much educational research from the past, and one of the big ones is a kid should see the next hardest thing. If you're at a 5th grade level, the next thing you should see should be 6th grade math. And you can't make giant leaps. So, Fighting the White Knight, Jocelyn Turner. It's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble. There are e-versions. And there are also weird things now. There were 2 copies on Poshmark. I don't know what that was. Anyway, any questions?
Does the book address how to get out of the circumstance we're in and into a better education system?
Yes, this is why I really expect to be slammed in reviews, because I am recommending, among other things, that we have to fix property tax-based school funding. That's somewhat incidental to the larger idea, which is if the kids are really behind, we have to let them go to school longer. We have to give them the hours they need. If you are missing 3,000 vocabulary words, maybe you should be going to school for 240 days instead of 180, because you need those words. And there is no magic fix. If everybody's going for 180 days, those kids who went in with 5,000 words instead of 3,000 words, they're just going to get ahead faster. Because vocabulary is a source of learning as well as a result of learning. And that kid with 2,000 more words can read a lot more books and can read them faster. I believe if you're going to fix it, you have to provide the supplemental tutoring those kids need. And that's going to be a lot more school time. But I don't think there's a magic solution that goes around that.
Head Start, how does that figure in? Head Start, how does that figure in? And would that be an additional help, particularly in remedial education?
I think Head Start and all early education programs that bring the kids into the system earlier are potentially very useful. And I would put a lot of money actually into getting children into school earlier, into getting children into school longer, with the understanding that recess is an essential part of life. When I say things like that, I worry, because then I think, yeah, they'll try to keep the 4-year-olds there for 10 hours reading books. And no, there have to be recesses. There has to be playing. But early education and just an understanding that if you can't do it in 7 hours and 180 days, then you keep going until you've done what has to be done. So, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. Now we're down to the end of the program for day one. Congratulations. Hold a big hand for everybody. Thank you so much, Jocelyn. I know there's a few of us left here, but we were jam-packed for since 10 in the morning, and we're so happy to be part of Printer Store Lit Fest. Again, ReadersMagnet is going to be live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Even tomorrow, we'll start at 10 in the morning. It's going to be our last day, day 2, and the last day also of the Printer Store Lit Fest. Thank you so much for being here. We still have book signing authors. You can grab 3 copies of books. We have here Linda Drake on the left side, and we have Elaine Vanderberg on the right side. I believe she's giving out children's books. Thank you so much for being here at the Reader's Magnet booth. See you tomorrow.
Personally have had great success with your company. My books have had great success with your company. And everybody that I talk to that wants to publish a book, I highly recommend Readers, because not only do you do the publishing side, but you have a killer marketing program.
It's been exciting. Met a lot of people of different walks of life. Everyone is